every day I come home and my dad says to me, "So Genevieve, do you still want to be a school teacher?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it's weird because like it's it's like I remember the first time I wrote down, it said like profession, and I didn't have to write student. I wrote teacher, and it was like, whoa, I am a teacher. Like that's really amazing. I was in the tech center the other day, and they have these student helpers that know a lot about computers. And this older teacher said to me, "Oh, are you a student helper?" And I was like, "No, I'm a teacher."
Good afternoon, and welcome to this 90-minute satellite telecast and simultaneous webcast. We have just seen a short video clip of Genevieve DeBose from the documentary Teach, directed by Davis Guggenheim, which follows 5 young teachers throughout their first year teaching in public schools. We'll be seeing several clips of Genevieve throughout our program. The title of our show is Building Evidence Systems for Accountability and Improvement in Teacher Education. I'm your host and moderator, Jerry Irvin. Our program is sponsored by the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, AASCU, or AASCU, as it is often known, and the California State University System with support provided by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. 2 campuses within the CSU system will be highlighted. They are Cal State Long Beach, where we are originating today's show, and Cal State Northridge. Today we will hear from representatives of AASCU, the CSU, and the 2 campuses I just mentioned. AASCU is headquartered in Washington, D.C. Each year, graduates from AASCU institutions comprise more than 50% of personnel eligible to acquire teaching credentials. This makes AASCU institutions the main teacher preparation institutions in the country. Accountability and improvement in teacher education are national concerns. Teacher retention is a serious issue in many states across the country. Accountability on the part of higher educational institutions that prepare teachers is slowly becoming a focal point for governors and state legislators who provide funding for state colleges and universities. In an effort to address this important issue, we've established several goals for today's program. These goals are: 1, to assist campuses as they seek to improve their teacher preparation programs; 2, to help universities build evidence systems for accountability and program improvement; 3, to share a conceptual model that focuses on 6 important outcomes related to teacher preparation program quality; 4, to demonstrate ways to gather and use data for decision-making; and finally, 5, to highlight a multi-university collaborative on accountability issues. Our program today is being received by over 300 registered sites. We hope to make this program interactive, and we welcome your questions. We will have 2 designated question and answer call-in sessions as the program progresses. The phone number you will call to ask questions live on the air is 1-800-756-0100. You may also fax or email your questions to the panel. The fax number is 562-985-5292. The email address is aascu@amp.csulb.edu. At this point, I'd like to introduce our main panelists. They are Mona Weinberg, Director of Teacher Education for the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. Our next panelist is Bill Wilson, Assistant Vice Chancellor, California State University System. We also have the deans of 2 colleges of education within the 23-campus CSU system. Jean Hauk is Dean of the College of Education here at California State University Long Beach. Philip Ruschi is Dean of the College of Education at Cal State Northridge. Welcome, panelists, and thank you for joining us. To help us get started on today's topic and further explain why we are here today, we have a videotaped message from George Mahaffey, the Vice President for Academic Leadership and Change at the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. Prior to taking on that portfolio, Dr. Mahaffey was Vice President for Academic Affairs at Eastern New Mexico State University and also served as Director of the School of Education at San Diego State University. Let's roll that video clip now.
Good afternoon. I'm George Mahaffey with the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. We're here to talk about accountability and evidence in teacher education. I've thought a lot about accountability as I prepared for this broadcast. I think that for many years in my own career, I fought accountability. But as I think about it today, I think that was probably a waste of time and energy, did not result in improved programs. The fact is, we are public institutions, or we are accepting public money for our students, and we are preparing candidates for the public schools. We are a public enterprise, and I think public enterprises have an obligation to be accountable. The core question, of course, is accountable to whom and accountable for what? Accountability, as I experienced it as the head of a teacher education unit, was mostly accountability for my unit, or accountability at some national level through accreditation or national norms. But as I reflect on that, I think that ultimately accountability, we are accountable ultimately to states, because the states are where teacher education occurs. It's not a national system. It's 50 systems of teacher preparation, 50 state school systems, and as a consequence, it is the state that is the unit of measure, appropriate unit of measure, it seems to me. It's also the state that has the data for much of the accountability system. So if the state is the unit of measure, then it seems to me that our obligation is to join with the state to figure out the most appropriate measures of accountability. But accountability for what? Well, the state, as the unit of measure, has legitimate questions about how many candidates we're producing. Are we producing enough? And do we have the appropriate balance, gender, ethnic balance, to represent the diversity in our schools? Are we preparing candidates in the right disciplines? Are we preparing candidates in the right parts of the state, for urban and rural districts in particular? So the question first is a question of production. The second is a question of retention. Do the teachers that we produce remain in the schools long enough to justify the expense in preparing them? Obviously, the most important question about accountability is, are we preparing candidates who have the capacity to improve, increase the learning outcomes of P-12 pupils? Incredibly difficult question. And I understand all the methodological, psychometric issues, questions of attribution, questions of intervening variables. But the fact is, we didn't engage in this work 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was involved in teacher preparation. And the consequence is today we're still talking about it rather than trying to do something about it. We must not let perfect be the enemy of good. Now, the question of data, and my last regret about my own career, is that I did not foster a culture of evidence in teacher preparation. Well, today it's different. Today people are drowning in data. Everybody's got data. In fact, if it can be counted, it is counted. Problem is that I think our campuses are spending an enormous amount of time and energy collecting data that is of little value and will seldom, if ever, be used. We need to engage in a new, robust national conversation about data in teacher education, about evidence in teacher education, and build a national consensus model for what states then might develop as the specific models that are appropriate to those states and their contexts. I'm pleased that you have joined us for this conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahaffey, for that introduction. I'm going to turn now to Mona Weinberg from AASCU. Mona, when we talk specifically about accountability, what do we hope our viewers will learn today?
Again, I want to extend my thanks to everyone for joining us today. You've heard the goals of this presentation and an overview of accountability in general. What I hope we will accomplish today is to extend the conversation about accountability, realizing that every institution begins from its own starting place in its own state context. What we want to share with you today is a model of what's happening in the CSU system and how they've gone about looking at the results of their teacher preparation. We hope it gives you a perspective and suggests ways that you might proceed, keeping foremost in your mind the purpose of quality teacher preparation is to improve children's learning.
Thank you, Mona. Now let's turn our attention to a specific model being used by the Cal State University system to track the multiple significant outcomes of teacher preparation. The model is referred to as the CSU Mosaic, and it has 6 specific outcomes. Here to tell us about it is Bill Wilson from the CSU Chancellor's Office. Bill, what is the Mosaic and how did it come together?
Our purpose today is not to focus on individual results, but how we present this data, how we continue to probe areas, and how campus leaders can develop an arsenal of information which can impact program change. When CSU began a comprehensive evaluation of teacher preparation, we first created this mosaic, a conceptual map taking into account key elements of an evaluation which work together. The mosaic answers the question, which outcomes of teacher preparation should we assess? We are assessing 6 distinct outcomes over time in the CSU. After summarizing these 6 outcomes, we will provide examples of what we are learning about each one. Outcome 1 consists of intrinsic qualities of each program as reported by graduates when they finish the program. Outcome 2 is the effectiveness of the program in terms of the level of each graduate's preparation as reported by the graduates during their first few years of K-12 classroom teaching. Outcome 3 is the effectiveness of a program as reported by the job supervisors of the graduates during their first years of teaching. The 4th outcome is based on the program's impact on teaching competence as reflected in a performance assessment that is technically sound measure of performance. The 5th is about retention. Do a program's graduates remain in teaching many years or not? Do they teach and stay in schools that need their talent? 6th, and most important in a standards-based K-12 system, can we track the effects of teacher preparation on the learning gains of K-12 pupils who are taught by our CSU graduates? I will now provide some examples of outcomes of tiles 1, 2, and 3 as we progress through the mosaic one more time. When our graduates complete their credential preparation, how well do they assess its adequacy? That is the question we address through our CSU exit survey each year. In the exit survey, campus administrators have real-time online access to campus data. Campus administrators can add their own questions to the system-wide survey. More than 6,000 program completers from 22 campuses participated in the online system-wide exit survey in 2006. This slide is an example of what we are learning from our exit survey. Almost 2/3 of recent graduates reported learning a lot about teaching in their CSU programs. Most of our other graduates reported learning quite a bit that was important. Before they begin teaching, negative overall assessments are reported by fewer than 10% of our graduates. Back in the mosaic, let's look at tile 2, related to our effectiveness as reported by graduates in their first year of teaching. This graph summarizes the responses of first-year teachers to a series of questions about the value of their fieldwork in our programs. Each CSU campus receives graphs like this one, which allows them to compare their own effectiveness with that of the entire CSU system. On the left side are the academic years when each cohort of new teachers finished their CSU credential programs. All of the bars represent the responses from a particular campus to the same questions about fieldwork. Campus administrators also receive similar graphs about several other domains of the teacher education curriculum, for example, child development. This graph illustrates what we learned from our graduates a year after they began teaching with our credentials in hand. Now let's look at Tile 3, relating to our effectiveness in the eyes of school administrators who supervise our graduates in their first year of teaching. Each year, we ask the job supervisors of our K-8 graduates to assess their preparation for reading instruction. Unlike most other follow-up studies of this type, we give each supervisor the name of a first-year teacher who is guided and assisted by that supervisor. Supervisors can report their first-year teacher to be well-prepared or adequately prepared, that is, meet standards, or somewhat prepared or not at all prepared. We ask supervisors the same question for 6 years. This graph summarizes their responses. In the graph, each response option is one of the colors shown at the left. Here we can track the CSU system's slow, gradual improvement in an important aspect of teacher preparation. In this same category of outcomes, other findings may show little or no improvement. The CSU system acts to remedy these findings. The percentages shown in this graph have a margin of error of less than 1% because of the very large numbers of responding supervisors.
Thanks, Bill, and I've been jotting a few notes here. We have a couple of deans on the set, so I'd like to ask them, first to Jean, how are the campuses and the deans and the schools actually involved in this CSU system-wide evaluation?
Well, Jerry, as the program unfolds today, I think we're going to see a theme of collaboration and partnerships. We believe that the more partnerships that we have, the stronger our programs are going to be, the better, more effective we're going to be. We practice collaboration within the universities, the campuses, with arts and sciences faculty and education faculty. We practice collaboration with the P-12 schools and with other universities and community colleges. Here at Cal State Long Beach, we have for over a decade had a partnership with the Long Beach, called the Long Beach Education Partnership. And it was formed with Long Beach Unified School District, Long Beach City College, and Cal State Long Beach. And we've worked together in a P16 collaborative to promote improved learning for all students. So when we began the CSU system-wide evaluation, that's just the way we work and the way within the system in the colleges. And so the deans of education met and developed the questions for this evaluation. And every year we continue to work together to make modifications in the evaluation. And we call on the school districts for helping us identify the teachers that we're going to assess. And they help us also with ensuring the participation of the teachers and their supervisors in the survey. So it all fits together. We all work together a great deal, and I think that's one of the reasons that we think it's as successful as it is.
Okay, and as you were talking, and as Bill was talking, I could, in my mind, imagine these mountains of data. Actually, I've seen one of your reports, and I'm reminded of what Dr. Mahaffey said in our opening piece. He's talked about we are drowning in data, some of which is of little value, some of which is of seldom if ever used. And I'm wondering, Phil, I'm going to direct this one to you, how have the campuses actually used these data?
As you know, we've been involved with the system-wide evaluation for 6 years now. I think it's fair to say that as the years have progressed, we've become more focused and more sophisticated in how we're using the information. At first, we were nervous about how people might interpret it. We were nervous about who might see it. We were very protective of any information that we had. Also, faculty, being researchers and methodologists, had concerns about the design of the instrument, the population, the size of the population, the methodology that was being used. But over the years, the deans working with the Chancellor's Office have managed to address those, and I think people are very comfortable with it now. Also, when you see the same items appear year after year after year, whether they're positive or negative, you can't really ignore them. In the last 2 years, we've all agreed to a system-wide accountability report where we analyze the data that we're given. We report back to the Chancellor. We share it among ourselves on to whom we've given the information, what our strengths are that we've identified, what the challenges are that we've identified, what changes we've made as a result of the data, so it is used, what goals we have for future usage and other type things. And we also make suggestions on how the instrumentation can be strengthened. At Northridge, as a result of the data, we've addressed some business practices from what our students said about advising and application procedures, matriculation processes. We've addressed information sessions and information being given out in brochures and that type of thing. We've also addressed curricular issues. Those things that were positive, we've tried to figure out how we can reinforce them and keep them there. Those things that were less flattering, we've tried to address in a variety of ways. We've undertaken a study of the use of technology in the college, and we have a very large report that we've taken to the central administration with requests for equipment, software, and modifications with our faculty and how we want to address that. We've looked very seriously at our reading programs and how we're addressing those. Math and science still remain a challenge to us, and we're working very, very closely with the arts and science faculty. So we are taking the information more and more serious each year, and we're making more use of it, and I think we're making changes. And I think that would be true throughout all the campuses in the CSU system.
Well, thank you. And that's a crucial point. I think that these mountains, reams of data are turned into information that get fed back into the system. Now we're going to take you to a conference at CSU Northridge where 3 professors of elementary education and the chair of that department are discussing the information they have received from the CSU system-wide evaluation.
When we were looking at the exit survey data, I did outline what criteria I used for determining what were strengths and what were challenges. There's some glaring challenges that we have, such as Hillary said, well, I don't know, discipline is one, and you've heard that from your own students as they're graduating from the program. We also have special learning needs. We have the one of working with at-risk students and families.
Right, and technology.
Technology, so technology, and also English learners.
Yeah.
What are the difficulties? What are you having problems with? What is something that came up for you?
I think we need to take this to some of the principals of the schools that have student teaching in. What could they do at the school sites to help the student teachers with this?
We see a lot of strengths that are here. We see a lot of things that we're doing really, really well.
Very well.
Yeah.
And we do see some challenges.
So we were asking very specific questions related to access because we've been very concerned about access to technology. And the access to technology is low. I mean, it's varied and it tends to be low in a lot of our student teaching placements.
See, for me, I'm very critical of myself. And so I want to know what was useful for them so the next time I go out and do it, I'll be able to change and modify and make it the best experience for them possible. So I think that this was my first semester doing university supervising, and I was surprised that there was no evaluation for the students, for me, as far as what did I do well, how was I helpful to them. And I think as a university supervisor, there's something that we could start incorporating in our program so that we can really start touching upon these things earlier on in the process.
Some students are feeling that they don't have the option of trying out things that they've learned in their methods classes and that they just have to follow a script. On the other hand, when you go and talk to some of the principals, they want teachers to come in and try out different things in the context of that particular program. Students don't realize that they have options even within the scripted part of the program.
And I think out of 125 students, we had 2 students who got to teach 11 science lessons in an entire student teaching.
If they're saying that no science, for example, is being taught in the class, perhaps we might want to go back to the guidelines that were given to university supervisors to say, okay, before the students are leaving, we want to make sure that at least one science lesson is taught.
We did that this last year.
On the last page, there is a question about making, on page 5, about the program provided an appropriate mixture of theoretical ideas and practical strategies. They're still not making that connection between theory and practice.
It's not necessarily easy for them, is it?
No.
It's not easy at all.
Exactly.
They get very, whenever I do my theory lectures, the students get so filled with anxiety. Because generally, and then I start, because I front load my theory and then I incorporate it into the methods throughout my methods courses. And they start off and they just, any talk of theory, they just get flustered and anxious. But the question is, how do we make them see that they're actually doing a lot of these things, but they don't really realize that they're doing it?
I think we're coming to a point now where we want to get down to the depths of what it means to teach effectively, where we're not just looking at management, we're not looking.
To follow that discussion that we've just seen of Cal State Northridge faculty, education faculty discussing data from their study, we now are turning to a couple of Cal State Northridge professors who are with us. They will tell us about the Teachers for a New Era. Michael Spagna, also known, is the Eisner Endowed Chair, Executive Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning and Professor of Special Education at the Michael D. Eisner College of Education at Cal State Northridge. Beverly Cabello is the Chair of the Department of Educational Psychology and Counseling, Interim Assessment Coordinator, and Professor of Educational Psychology at the Michael D. Eisner College of Education at Cal State Northridge. And I believe, Phil, you're going to have a little bit of introduction for them?
Yes, thank you, Jerry. California State University Northridge is one of 11 institutions nationally involved in the Teachers for a New Era initiative. The initiative is funded by the Carnegie Foundation, Carnegie Corporation of New York, the Annenberg Foundation, and the Ford Foundation. It's important to note that the project is directed by the provost of the university. It is an all-university program, not just the College of Education. The initiative is to address certain principles that will help us re-envision teacher preparation as we currently know it. We're fortunate to have 2 of the faculty leaders who are moving us through this project at the university.
Okay, so Michael, I guess it comes to you now, does it not?
Yes, we think that it would be really helpful to start to describe this project by starting with a slide that has a quote from Michael DeCourcy-Hines. Assess, diagnose, prescribe, and adjust practice to reflect new research, training, and experience. That's what a modern clinical professional does. The job description not only fits physicians who see patients in clinics, it precisely defines the work of teachers who see students in classrooms. We think that quote kind of sets the stage for a description of the Teachers for a New Era project. It is comprised of 3 central principles, so let's go through these one at a time. The first principle, Principle A, is a design principle that defines decisions driven by evidence. We'll come back to this in a few moments with Dr. Cabello giving you some of the specific activities we've been doing at Cal State Northridge to satisfy this principle. 2 of the features of this are that drawing upon research and also the role of pupil learning is critical to all of our endeavors in teacher preparation. Principle B, the second principle, is designed about the engagement with the arts and sciences, and that includes subject matter understanding, general and liberal education, and the connection between College of Education faculty along with College of Arts and Sciences faculty. The third principle is Design Principle C, teaching as an academically taught clinical practice profession. And this contains several features, most notably pedagogy, schools as clinics, teachers on faculty appointment, residency or an induction requirement, And then finally, preparation of candidates for professional growth to satisfy a continuum of professional development. In addition to these central principles, there also are additional issues to be addressed jointly by College of Education faculty and Arts and Sciences faculty. These include pedagogical content knowledge, literacy and numeracy skills, elementary and middle school education, technology, cultural considerations in teaching and learning, recruitment of underrepresented groups into teaching, and finally, late deciders in an undergraduate program. In addition to the California State University Northridge, we also have additional university participants. There are 11 in total. These include, as you'll see on the slide, Bank Street College of Education, Boston College, Florida A&M University, Michigan State University, University of Connecticut, University of Texas at El Paso, University of Virginia, University of Washington, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and finally Stanford University. Now I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Cabello for a minute to describe a little specifics in terms of activities we're doing to satisfy Design Principle A on evidence.
As Dr. Spagna mentioned earlier, the design principle of decisions driven by evidence comprises two components. All decisions are based on drawing upon the latest research or original research done by the university itself. And our goal for research is to look at the impact of teacher preparation on pupil learning. When we began this effort in research in T&E, one of the first things we did was to design and implement a pilot study to see what kind of information we already had of our teacher preparation and what kind of information we could gain on our K-12 pupils. And then also to begin to conceptualize how are we going to connect the two? What kind of research can we design to connect these two huge pieces of information? And so we designed a pilot study, and in the implementation of that study, we discovered what data we had, what data we didn't have at the university, and something very important, how accessible that information is, and how we might go about improving accessibility. And part of the outcome of that, a great outcome, was the development of something called a data warehouse to facilitate the acquisition of data at the university, of how we prepare our teachers, as well as to facilitate the linkage of that information with information on our K-12 pupils. This also involved a partnership between the CSU Northridge, and one of our service districts, the Los Angeles Unified School District. Through the Chancellor's Office, we arrived at a partnership in which LAUSD will provide data on K-12 students of our teachers who have graduated, so that we can then draw the linkage of the impact of our teachers, our CSUN teachers, on our K-12 pupils. After completing that initial pilot study, then came the task of then conceptualizing a final study at a grander scale. And so we formed an additional partnership with a major research center at the University of California at Los Angeles, CREST. And so they are helping us undertake a larger study of the linkage between our teacher preparation and the impact that has on K-12 pupils.
We thought it would be of value now to show you a clip of some of our College of Education faculty in conversation with subject matter faculty from arts and sciences and in the discipline of mathematics. There are three features of this video that would be interesting to watch. The first is a discussion about following teachers out in the classroom to see whether or not what they were taught is actually being used in classrooms. The second feature is looking at videotaped footage of teachers with subject matter faculty and College of Ed faculty jointly having a conversation of what's important in terms of effective teaching. And then finally, you'll hear an end of the video clip talking about some of the barriers. These aren't all the subject matter faculty in the discipline of math, just a few, but it's a good start.
part of TNE where the secondary ed department is the first one to try a study of actually going out in the field and observing our recent graduates. And we're actually going out with a set of sort of exemplary practices in hand that our math educators came up with. We're going to go observe the people in their classrooms and come back, and we're doing it with secondary math.
I'm very intrigued by your description of the videotaping the student teachers and then coming back and having a mathematician and their supervisor sort of.
And you know what the great part of that is?
That.
It's the university supervisors who are asking for the opportunity to sit down with the subject matter professors to look at the tapes.
And I think that that'll be really good for the math person too, because they'll see sort of how the math that they teach is actually being applied in the schools.
Focusing on student explanation, thinking about how we respond to student errors, maintaining richness of problems, all of these themes, and there are many more that I nowadays can name. I sort of have a little list, but I feel like the sort of conversation with education has been very useful.
Well, I really tell them in the first days they have to listen to this math class differently than ever before. They have to listen with teacher ears. And in my mind, the students that really understand things deeply are going to be in the long run far better off.
She had students who weren't passing.
No, they know they're getting enough.
They know that they're not passing the class, and they're going to have to repeat the class, and they say, this is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Right, and they're going to retake the course.
When you have students who are saying, oh, you have a subject matter lower division student who's saying, oh my gosh, I never realized how important this is going to be. So I don't know enough, and I need to come back and learn more.
You've got to be kidding me. I mean, once they get to the credential program, they have one subject-specific course, which is the methods course. And it's nowhere near enough of an opportunity for them to focus on math and how you teach it. And that may be anything that you can do at the undergraduate level while they're taking their content courses to help them start thinking about pedagogical issues. It's going to help us.
I feel like I should also issue a disclaimer. We have not saved the world just yet. Not everybody sees it the same way we do. There are more people than just the 3 or the 5 of us. There are.
Okay, that was a piece of a discussion at Cal State University Northridge between some content area faculty and some pedagogy faculty. We're going to invite our panel to comment on that kind of a discussion, how frequently it takes place, and what was involved in getting those kinds of discussions set up. But before we do that, I want to remind our listening and viewing audience that we are here to answer your questions. We'd appreciate them. We are ready to try to address them anyway. If you want to ask a question on the air, we have a live telephone hookup ready for you to use. That number is 1-800-756-0100. You can fax in a question. We've gotten a couple already at 562-985-5292. And you can email in a question at aascu@amp.csulb.edu. So do let us hear from you. Let's go to Phil. Phil, let me set this up a different way. My own alumni magazine, the University of Arizona, a plug there, is working on something they call synergistic education. And I'm going to read a little bit from that alumni magazine that I ripped out just last week it came. The Professional Preparation Board, which was formed in 1999, identifies school and community-based needs, charts new directions to enhance retirement, retention, and accountability in professional preparation. Composed of representatives from University of Arizona colleges associated with teacher preparation and of community and school personnel, the PPB initiates wide-ranging dialogue and study of critical issues in education. Now, it seems to me, Phil, that this kind of dialogue is exactly what we just saw an example of within a university setting, the Cal State University Northridge. Did you, I'll ask a very perhaps indiscreet question, encounter any resistance when trying to set up this kind of dialogue between what have been, I think historically, at least in some places, faculty that don't talk to each other on a regular basis?
It wasn't resistance we dealt with initially, that came later. What we really had to deal with initially was the fact that we had two different worlds and we were trying to bring them together. They didn't speak the same language. They were on different schedules. They had different orientations. So we really had to do a lot of groundwork to just enable the structural component of getting together. Once we got them together and got the dialogue started, the behavioral aspect started, so that's where the resistance came in. But after about 4 years of this dialogue, the type of thing you saw in the clip has become the norm on campus.
But it took time, and it didn't happen naturally immediately. Michael, did you want to add something to that?
Well, one of the things that really helped, I think, Jerry, in starting that conversation was focusing on a document we put together, a working paper on effective teaching, so that the real focus was not just on disciplines and territory, but more on a common goal, which was to really train and prepare an effective teacher. And so if you heard in that video clip, there was a real focus on let's come together, look at videotapes, and talk about what our relative contributions to this effective teaching would be.
Mm-hmm. Beverly, how about a little addition from your point of view?
Well, I would say the real merging of the cultures happened as they created specific activities that address the goals in the Good Teaching document. And so in the video clip, you see faculty from the math department and faculty from math methods who together have been trying to study and make adaptations to the undergraduate math curriculum that's directed at teachers. And so in that 4-year effort, they have, that's where the understanding, the mutual understanding and the mutual language has been created.
Mm-hmm. We're talking now, I want to say also to our viewing audience, we're talking now about the video clip we just saw, which was the Cal State University Northridge faculty. But you can call in now with any kind of a question about anything that we've said so far. And that number again is 800-756-0100. Operators are standing by. This offer will not be repeated in stores. Let's see. We have here a faxed-in question from Mary Lou Fulton College of Education at Arizona State University. Go Arizona. How do the instruments meet? This is about evidence of teacher effectiveness. And the question says, how do the instruments meet the research criteria promulgated by the U.S. government and those ideas promoted in the AERA Teacher Education Report? That's a mouthful. Anybody want to try to address that one? Go ahead, Beverly.
I'll make an attempt.
Please.
I think that's a question that all teacher preparation colleges in the United States have been dealing with and will continue to deal with. Because for, as many of you know, in order for an instrument to meet those criteria, that means that we have to conduct reliability and validity studies, not just once, but on a continuing basis. And so, and at the same time, these instruments have to reflect certain standards for our accreditation purposes and state standards. And so in our college, for example, we do have a set of instruments that have been written to all of those standards, and now we're in the process of conducting the reliability studies and validity studies. We have begun, but it's a process, and it's going to take, I would say, a few years before we can honestly say, yes, they definitely meet those criteria.
Mm-hmm. Any comment from over here on this side of the table? We have another question that we can go to. This was a faxed-in question or an emailed-in question. It says, without data on several things, like the knowledge that the teachers arrive with in their classrooms and the pedagogical practice they actually enact in their classrooms, how do we know, this is the nub of the question, how do we know what our program, teacher education program, might have contributed to K through 12 pupil learning? That is to say, are students successful or unsuccessful, are the programs successful or unsuccessful with K through 12 students because of what we teach them or in spite of what we teach them? And that sounds like it has something to do with your mosaic.
Well, I'll be happy to take a shot at that, Jerry. It's so far, we have talked about the first 3 tiles in the mosaic, which deal mainly with how students feel about the program before they go out and teach. How did they feel about their preparation after their first year of teaching? And third, how did their supervisors feel about that particular teacher? Now, we do know that these principals that are supervising those teachers are not in a mode to provide a comment that is going to just make those teachers feel good. Nobody wants a successful teacher more than a principal. So we feel like we're getting an honest assessment from those principals.
And let me just interrupt and say we will have a principal on this panel in just a few moments.
Yes, and we are, as we will explain later in the program, looking at K-12 student learning, and we can talk about the complexity of doing that a little bit later. But most of these questions that were on the instrument were developed by the deans of education along the California K-12 state standards. So they are in response to what the students in the school are expected to learn. So we feel like we are getting at those areas. It's a fairly extensive survey, and our response rates are well over 50%. So we do have thousands of first-year teachers answering these questions. So we feel good about the reliability and the validity.
Great. And I understand that we now have a call, our first call for the day, from the state of Texas. Texas, I think I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Carmen Delgado.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm calling with Texas A&M University, Kingsville. Okay, well, my question is, actually, I see this in the sense of I guess what I'm asking is, how do you guys, or you all see it, relative to a graduate program? You've been mentioning before how teacher quality has a lot to do with the administrators and principals, for example. I came from a teacher quality grant conference just this weekend, and we were talking about these very issues. And the way one of the areas that I would like to investigate further is a qualitative analysis of teacher quality in a graduate program. For example, most of those students are future administrators, and having them identify what factors are most reflective of enhanced teacher quality, relative to, for example, some of the results of your surveys and what research says currently.
Okay.
Also, more in-depth experience with research journals, connecting theory to practice, which sometimes becomes a very big issue with the teachers on the campuses. And how do we actually, as administrators, then facilitate a more research-based campus in order to connect that theory and that practice?
Okay, let's try to see if we can answer that question. If one of our panelists would like to jump in on that question.
Yeah.
Mona.
I'll give it a try. One thing I think it's important to think about is we need a lot of research in teacher preparation. There's no question. We have not done the depth of research and the high-level research that we need to do. So I would encourage this graduate student to pursue her thoughts about the kinds of research she's interested in. We're not trying to prescribe any research program or any one research agenda. We just want people to make sure that whatever it is they research that has to do with teacher preparation, they include attempts to assess value added of the program as it relates to the learning of the program graduate students.
Okay, and we have now a call on the line from Illinois, the state of Illinois.
Hello.
Yes.
My question is related to closer to the arts and sciences. We have the opportunity to have a program that begins in the freshman year in the Gen Ed and the content minor. Our arts and science faculty are looking for ways to build an evidence base of how students, as they move through these content courses, build content knowledge, build content-specific knowledge and competencies, build content applicable pedagogy. In other words, how do they collect the kind of data that makes sense both for looking at their discipline learning outcomes and the kinds of content knowledge they're hoping to support pre-service teachers in developing as they matriculate into colleges of education.
Thank you for that question. And I will ask, I think probably many of our listeners heard that we had some echo there. I believe that was a feedback loop. So when you call in, please turn down the volume on your set, because otherwise we get that feedback loop and that echo. And Jean, you said you would try to answer that question, or at least address it.
You know, when we've worked with the arts and sciences and education faculty, and I guess probably the biggest process of that was several years when we were developing our integrated program for elementary teacher preparation. One of the things that you spoke about, the different worlds in arts and sciences and education, one of the differences was our our math and science college colleagues really want data on most everything. And so one of the ways that I think science ed faculty looked at this is when they teach the capstone course and they do the pre-test, post-test in the class itself, and then every class, and they look for trends, they look at the results that they have, and I think that's one of the ways that they talk about knowing like what's happening, what the students are learning, and the change during the class. And one of the things that they do that was pretty interesting is they also put in attitudinal measures and questions, because they think it's important that they have that they feel better about and like science, because that's been one of the challenges, particularly with females.
Particularly with females, indeed. We now have a call from Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., I hope your volume is turned down.
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you. Go right ahead.
My question is, how does national board certification factor into this process? And if so, well, how does it?
That's a nice brief question.
I'll take
Mona
that.
wants to jump in on that.
Well, national board process is a performance assessment. Its initial assessment is performance assessment, but it also includes a quantitative component at a testing center. When we talk about teacher learning and teacher quality, we recognize that teachers aren't finished learning when they finish our programs, that it's really a continuum, that they need to continue to learn, to continue to question, to continue to keep up on the current research. National board certification is a way for teachers to get recognition and to guide the continuation of their learning and to make sure that that learning affects what they do in their classrooms.
Jerry, may I add
Go ahead, Phil.
Traditionally, we've had teachers in residence in the College of Education. We bring in K-12 teachers for a number of years to work with us. We got a grant from the Keck Foundation where we have Keck teachers in residence, K-12 teachers put into the arts and sciences departments. We have 3 of them, one in English, one in mathematics, and one in geography. This doesn't directly address the evidence, but it has had a profound impact on the arts and science departments, having national board teachers that we've selected in the arts and science departments.
Great. It's time for us to move to more of the mosaic. As a matter of fact, I'm going to mention this question that we received, so Hawaii will not be worried. Aloha from the University of Hawaii. Hilo. The presentation of the mosaic evaluation system went very quickly. How can I get more info? We thought you'd never ask. Bill is going to talk about the mosaic, tile 4, I believe. And but at the end of the show, hang on, because there will be information on how you can get copies of this whole show and information on the mosaic and anything else that you might be interested in.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Tile 4 moves us away from survey evaluations and focuses on actual performances of our graduates in teaching. California is changing its credential requirements. Soon, each applicant for a credential will have to pass a teaching performance assessment. CSU and other institutions are preparing to implement assessments that are more uniform, valid, and reliable than past assessments have been. Several CSU campuses are getting ready to implement a state-developed assessment described in the light yellow field on this slide. A few campuses are preparing to implement an alternative assessment they have developed described in the darker yellow field. Performance assessments are becoming another source of evidence about teacher education's outcomes. This is why performance assessment is included in our mosaic as an alternative to survey evidence in tiles 1 through 3, and to still other outcomes that are the subjects of tiles 5 and 6 in the mosaic. Now, CSU Long Beach has developed a unique preparation experience that should contribute to candidates' skills in teacher performance called the Urban Teaching Academy.
Thank you very much, Bill, and we're going to get to that Urban Teaching Academy in just a moment. I want to recap just a moment for what we've seen now. We had George Mahaffey from AASCU who was talking about the need for accountability, and we've had Bill telling us about this model for accountability that they call the CSU mosaic. We've seen 4 of those tiles. Now we're going to make that transition to a very challenging area. I think most of us who have been in education understand how challenging it can be to teach in an urban setting. And to start us off with that, we're going to have roll another video clip from Genevieve DeBose.
Like, I know a lot of people have, like, you know, one defining moment when you know, like, when you know you want to be a teacher, you know you want to do certain things. While I was at school, like, I worked in a middle school and at Berkeley High School. Just working with the kids, I worked with them for 2 years. What really caught my attention was seeing how so many African American and Latino students were doing so poorly in these classes. And this being like, wow, like, everybody else is doing really well, but these kids are just, like, way off. You know, like, they're not even in there, or, like, every student that was failing was always Black or Latino. And so it was like, God, what? I mean, I couldn't just be there for those 2 hours a day and just leave and be like, okay, well, I did my part, that's all for me. And I knew that, like, I had to do something more. So I knew that, you know, I wanted to be a teacher. So I said, okay, I'm gonna apply for grad school and go in education. So then when I actually start teaching, I'll have some sort of background. And it's really neat to think of all the theory that I learned in, like, the last year and apply it to, like, actual reality and what's going on in the classroom. And so just seeing how, like, kids were just falling through the cracks, I mean, in, like, huge numbers. And, like, almost every kid in that class who was Latino was, like, D or fail. And that was really scary to me. And it was scary to me that a lot of teachers didn't even notice that. That it was like, oh, these are my students that are failing. And it didn't click that these kids were Latino. And it was, I mean, for me, it was like, wow, somebody needs to do something about this. And I know I'm one person, but, I mean, one person's better than nobody, you know.
I like that. One person's better than nobody. And that was Genevieve DeVos. And by the way, I'm told it's not Genevieve, it is Genevieve. She pronounces it that way. We have, as you may notice if we get a Skycam shot, we've just changed our a group of people here on the stage, and we have people here to talk with us about the Urban Teaching Academy at CSU Long Beach and Long Beach Unified School District. On my far right is Felipe Goles. He is a professor in the Department of Teacher Education at CSU Long Beach. He coordinates the university's Urban Teaching Academy and is co-director of the CSU Long Beach Center for Collaboration in Education. To his immediate left is Linda Simcox. She is Associate Professor of Teacher Education at CSU Long Beach and Director of the Graduate Program in Curriculum and Instruction, Elementary Option. She serves as co-director of the CSU Long Beach Urban Teaching Academy. Robin Samana, to my immediate left, is principal of Bret Harte Elementary School, which is a school of 1,100 students in the Long Beach Unified School District. And Lisa Isbell is assistant director of curriculum, instruction, and professional development at Long Beach Unified School District. She is also an adjunct faculty member at CSU Long Beach. Now we're going to look at this Urban Teaching Academy, this UTA that we just heard about. We're going to go from the general to the specific, and to help us do that, I guess we will start with Lisa.
Thank you, Jerry. As Jean Hauk alluded to earlier, the Long Beach collaboration is a long-standing partnership. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the history of this partnership because, as we know, these kinds of things don't tend to happen very easily. In the early 1990s, Long Beach was faced with a series of very serious developments. Aerospace was downsizing dramatically, the naval base was closing, gang activity and student violence was on the rise, and as a result, our student achievement was at an all-time low. So to this end, to try and stem this downward spiral that was happening in the community, several visionary leaders met to try and come up with some solutions. The Long Beach Education Partnership was established from that venture and included the superintendent of schools, the president of the community college system, and the president of the California State Long Beach University. The partnership at that point launched its first initiative, which was called Seamless Education, and the program you're going to hear about today is going to be a direct result of that Seamless Education Partnership. The mission of the partnership at that time, and continues to be, is to prepare all students for higher education in the world of work without the need for serious remediation. The goals of this program are to improve student achievement at all levels and increase institutional efficiency through alignment of curriculum, instruction, assessments, and resources for teachers and college educators. In addition, the research offices from all three institutions work together to establish success indicators and collect data and analyze that data to see where we're moving on our continuum. The partnership has defined seamless education as alignment of content standards, learning methodologies, and assessments for students from pre-K all the way through the master's degree program. And to move that agenda forward, ensuring coherent exit and entry expectations for all teacher preparation participants, and to move this agenda forward by putting together initiatives that will propel students to the next millennium. So to move this forward, I'm going to turn it over to Linda Simcox, who's going to talk specifically about our urban teacher partnerships.
Thank you, Lisa. We've talked a lot today about the incredible complexity of teaching. Not only do teachers have to be phenomenally proficient in their subject matter knowledge, but they have to monitor 30 to 35 students a day, change course as they go, differentiate instructions. Teaching is probably one of the most complex activities of any job, even compared perhaps with a doctor or a lawyer who are sometimes working with one person or not necessarily all day with so many people. The Urban Teaching Academy was an attempt on our part to recreate the medical residency model, where it doesn't make a lot of sense always to train teachers on a university campus and then throw them into the trenches for student teaching for a short period of time, and then they are expected to all of a sudden be proficient in this phenomenally complex enterprise. So we have developed what would normally be called a professional development school, but I'll explain why it's perhaps a little bit more than that. The Urban Teaching Academy trains teachers on site where they take their field experiences, their seminars, their student teaching at a real school. They learn what real time is, what it's like when parents come into the principal's office, what is the rhythm of the day, what are the demands of a school where most of the children don't speak English, perhaps as a first language. It's wonderful for them because it's convenient. The faculty drives to campus rather than the students driving to the university. So one aspect of the Urban Teaching Academy is the pre-service component. Another aspect is something that we feel we've added to the ordinary professional development school, which is an on-site master's program. So imagine graduate students who are now professional teachers going, again, to take courses after school, on their own school campus. The kids are walking by the classroom, and their capstone experience is an action research project where they use their quantitative and qualitative methods to research real problems in their school and find real solutions to them. Now, there's a third piece to the Urban Teaching Academy. The faculty from the university are working on the school sites, and it is keeping the faculty absolutely current in what is going on in the schools. And what we like to think is we're now creating a continuous feedback loop of knowledge between the pre-service teachers, the in-service teachers, and the university faculty. And we hope that all of what you've heard from earlier in the program about the mosaic, about the data and the questionnaires, and the type of information we're gathering, we're trying to feed right back into this program. So my colleague, Felipe Golez, will give you a little sense of how that is fed back into the program.
I'm going to share kind of two items here. We conducted a survey, our colleagues at the College of Education and our colleagues at Long Beach Unified. In collaboration, we conducted a survey of teacher preparation programs, and what we wanted to find out is where teachers learned their strategies that they use in the classroom. And so I would like to share those findings and tell you how the UTA addresses the needs emerging from that particular study. We had kind of multiple findings, but I'm just going to share a few of them. Our first finding was that teachers learned on a kind of a continuum. They definitely learned in the teacher preparation program, but they also learned in the district professional development in services. They learned a lot in their classroom experiences. So it's not just one place where they develop as a teacher. They also told us that in teacher preparation, the most useful aspect are the field experiences and student teaching where they interact with real children and in real classrooms and with the culture of the schools. They also told us that they needed more day-to-day kind of content about what occurs in the classroom and have that content connected to real-life applied activities in the classroom. For instance, they told us they needed more classroom management, they needed more parent involvement, and they needed more information about special needs or addressing the needs of children with special needs. They also told us something that we thought was pretty good. They told us that our UTA pilot was highly effective in preparing them as teachers, and that it brought a level of professional development to them in their master's program also. So overall, the entire UTA program is pretty much a site-based program, so it addresses all those needs that came up in our study. Our program is completely in the schools, and it brings teachers and practitioners together within the schools. Also, we're addressing some of the needs that came out of our study. We found out that there was a need for special need content, so we're infusing special need content into pre-service education, into the methods courses, into student teaching, and into our master's courses that are site-based at one of our UTAs. And in fact, we're moving it to all our UTAs. If you could show that slide that we have there, I want to show you a slide up here. And if you look at this slide shows the time when we began at the UTA at Bret Harte Elementary and the time and right now in 2005. And you can see that when we arrived, before we arrived, the API index was at 552, and you can see it moving up to 742 today. And we can't take complete credit for that because it was a joint collaborative effort of ourselves, the district, of the magnificent teachers at Bret Harte Elementary, and it was basically a focused energy into that school that made those API scores move. And also the California Standards testing scores moved up in mathematics and in English language arts. And so it just goes to show you what happens when a UTA, when energy is put into a school from the district and from university. And so,
thanks, Felipe. Well, now comes the time we hear from the principal. Was it really that good?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Absolutely. Bret Harte is a very special place. It has phenomenal teachers who every day are about teaching and learning. And one of the powerful pieces with this partnership is that it's a daily, ongoing self-assessment of their teaching because they're teaching others. With the student teachers being in their classrooms, they're working with them on a daily basis to perfect their program and their teaching craft. And the conversations that occur, whether it's at grade level meetings or at the seminars that they have weekly, they examine the learning. My involvement in it as a principal is I get to watch and to involve myself in their conversations and to talk about what ifs and problem solving. Along with this, the Harte teachers have an opportunity to perfect their craft by taking master's classes. And as Linda said, on campus, it's convenient. It's a win-win situation for them. The kids benefit, the school benefits because we're all focused in on teaching and learning. And the school continues to make progress and excel at what we're good at, and our kids deserve it.
Okay, and we have one more piece of this Urban Teaching Academy that we want to talk about. Yesterday, because she couldn't be with us today, I had the opportunity to interview Nushin Sarabaksh, who is a graduate of the UTA and is now a teacher at Bret Harte. So can we roll that tape, please? Nushin Sarabaksh, she goes by Nushi, is a fourth-year elementary school teacher at Bret Harte Elementary School. She served as a student teacher for a full year prior to being hired at Bret Harte, and after a few years of teaching, she joined the CSU Long Beach Master's Cohort at Bret Harte, from which she graduated last spring. Nushi, if you don't mind, thank you for being here, and tell us a little bit about your experience in teaching.
Thank you, Jerry. As you mentioned, I did begin my student teaching at Bret Harte Elementary School. Instead of doing 8 weeks of traditional student teaching, I was fortunate enough to student teach for a full year at Bret Harte. 2 months at a time. I did 4 different, I was a student teacher in 4 different grade levels. And as a result, I was able to be immersed in the school community. The students got to know me, the faculty got to know me, I got to know them, as well as the administrators who came in and observed me. And at the end of the year, as a result, I was hired on as a third grade teacher.
It's terrific. There's a lot more experience than a lot of beginning teachers, myself included, ever got before our first job. Tell me a little bit about the professional development partnership between CSU Long Beach and the Long Beach Unified School District and how it has impacted you as a teacher.
Well, this is a very interesting relationship. Cal State Long Beach has teamed up with Bret Harte Elementary School to basically use Bret Harte as a professional development school. Most of the professors from the education program have been sent to help out at Bret Harte Elementary and to train our teachers. My credential classes were held at Bret Harte Elementary School. And then a few years later, the same thing happened with what they called a master's cohort. I was able to earn a master's degree in curriculum and instruction through Cal State Long Beach at Bret Harte Elementary School, which meant I got to walk from my classroom to across the playground to the library and have my master's classes. And what started as convenience ended up impacting the entire school and the students.
Through that action research, and how do you think it has really impacted your students?
Well, my colleagues and I went through and we put together action research projects which were based on the needs of the students and the school. And of course, all of our action research projects were tailored especially for specific students, specific subgroups, cultures, and of course, it was so powerful because we got to see the change through our action research.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Nuzi. It's very good to have, how should I say, the guinea pig tell us how the experiment's working out. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you very much.
And now, through the miracle of modern digital television, we're going to go back to the future. I'll change my tie. And meanwhile, we will see a short video clip of Genevieve in her middle school classroom teaching a short lesson about Cesar Chavez.
What really caught my attention was seeing how so many African American and Latino students were doing so poorly. I mean, for me, it was like, wow, somebody needs to do something about this.
Fernando.
You fought for right?
Yeah. Okay, Marvin. I'll come back to you. John, give me another one. Perfect. That's a great word. Why was he successful? Tony.
Because he was the leader of the UNFA and he wanted people to fight for their rights.
75 kids that you're to answer to every day. Get them to learn.
Courageous, okay?
Well, Bill, it seems natural, and by the way, welcome back to the set, those of you who were gone momentarily. It seems natural teachers are in challenging settings, and sometimes it's the youngest and the least experienced teachers who get into those most challenging settings, and that can lead to teacher burnout. So what does your fifth mosaic tell us about that?
Tile 5 focuses on the extent to which our credential graduates actually become teachers and then remain in teaching for extended periods. We continue to hear stories about how few teacher credential graduates actually become teachers and how few continue to teach more than 3 to 5 years. However, our own data show that approximately 95% of our credentialed graduates are full-time teachers 1 year after leaving the university. But how long do they stay in teaching? And what prompts some teachers to quit? Could teacher preparation improve retention rates? We are completing a large-scale random survey of teachers who remained in teaching as well as ones who dropped out. The primary focus of this survey is the reasons why stayers stay and why leavers leave. It's interesting to note among leavers, no more than 13% said their credential program coursework affected a lot or somewhat their resignations. Among the stayers, 58% said their education courses prepared them to be successful and were important factors in their retention. In a parallel analysis, we plan to investigate how many teachers CSU CSU teachers remain as many as 8 years, and how many remain in hard-to-staff schools. For this analysis, we have requested, but not yet received, data from the State Employment Department.
Okay, and the proof of all of this, of course, is going to be in the pudding. So maybe we ought to talk about Tile 6, which deals with pupil outcomes.
This is a very difficult area. Tile 6 addresses the pupil learning, and we are forming partnerships with 7 large school districts in California, which are providing pupil data linked to data about teachers, data about schools, and data about CSU programs. The next slide gives us one glimpse at some preliminary findings which pertain directly to teaching English learners. The left side plots pupil learning in grade 5 language skills. The center plots pupil growth in grade 5 reading. The right side shows learning in math. We have separated the students into 2 groups. One's taught by new CSU teachers in red, and the other's taught by new teachers from outside the CSU, which are noted in blue. In both groups, the teachers had from 1 to 4 years of teaching experience in a common set of urban elementary schools in California. The State Department of Education classified both groups of students as English learners, which is the fastest growing group of students in California. Learning gains by both groups were statistically significant, but differences between the groups were more modest in size. In teaching English learners, we found that students of new CSU teachers had greater learning gains than students taught by a matched set of new teachers from outside the CSU. Next, CSU wants to find out which attributes of teacher preparation contribute most to learning gains by California's English learners. The previous slide focused on English learners, and the next slide looks at teaching of students from low-income families in California. The 3 small graphs examine the teaching of language skills, reading skills, and math skills, just like before. We measure each student's post-test level of proficiency in relation to the same student's proficiency when the school year started. Again, the students are tracked in relation to their teachers and in relation to the universities where the teachers were prepared. So we have separate groups of students with new CSU prepared teachers in red and new teachers prepared outside the CSU in blue. But this time, the students taught by non-CSU teachers were initially more proficient than those who were taught by new CSU teachers. Notice that by the end of the year, the students taught by new CSU teachers outpaced their counterparts and became significantly more proficient in the skills. The increased teaching effectiveness of new CSU teachers, which we noticed before, enabled a low-performing group of low-income students to become more proficient than other students at the end of the year. Soon, our evaluation will shift in an effort to learn the characteristics of teachers and universities that give rise to highly effective teaching. I hope this scenario has allowed you to see that overall, the mosaic helps us to ascertain the strengths and weaknesses of CSU teacher education. Each tile in the mosaic by itself gives us a limited view that could exaggerate or otherwise distort our strengths or weaknesses. Knowing our strengths and weaknesses based on valid, reliable evidence, we also use the mosaic to plan the growth of our evaluation over time.
Thanks very much, Bill. And of course, to our viewing audience, we know that a lot of those tiles were a little bit too small for most of us to be able to see on the screen. But at the end of the program, you'll get information about how you can get more information about this program and the slides and the tiles and so on. This is not a big secret that we're going to keep here. We now have a video clip about the Council of the Great City Schools, and it's kind of a PSA, a public service announcement, but Phil, perhaps you could introduce the Council of the Great City Schools for us.
Right, Bill had mentioned that we'll be doing data collection with 6 large urban schools. Each of these are members of the Council of the Great City Schools, And the public service announcement kind of highlights the focus of the council. Note there'll be information about pupil learning, information about accountability, and competent teaching.
So let's roll that clip.
Thanks for my new school book.
Thank you for the new computers.
Thank you for Miss Hodges.
It's happening across America. City schools making real progress.
Thank you for a safe place to learn. Thanks to Mr. Martinez.
It takes involved parents, committed teachers, and real accountability. But most of all, it takes us, the people of our cities, working together. Find out what you can do. Let's help all our children succeed.
Thank you for our future.
Okay, we just have a few more minutes to take a few more calls. If you'd like to call in, that number is 1-800-756-0100. And we do have a couple of emailed questions here. This is from Gary Barnes. He's asking, what kind of response rates do you get from your survey of 1, supervisors of new teachers, and 2, program completers after 1 year? And what steps do you take to encourage high response rates, assuming you get them? I think that's mostly to you.
Good question. We get keep in mind that we have 6 years of information. It varies from year to year, but we have received between 50 and 60% of surveys from both graduates as well as supervisors.
Okay. And another question, this one says, regarding the evaluation program with the LA School District in which students taught by Northridge prepared teachers, so this is going to come over to that end of the table, what is the control against which these students are compared? How do you assess value added by the Northridge program?
Okay. I'll take that. Right now, our studies of the impact of our teacher preparation programs on pupil learning, the focus is not so much to evaluate the teachers as to tease out through research what are the factors of teacher preparation that have a relationship with pupil learning and in what intensity. We did do a pilot study to this effect, and now we have a larger sample, and we've turned over that very complex statistical study to one of our partners, CREST at UCLA. It's a major research center, and they're developing a value-added model that will enable us to take teacher preparation indicators as well as pupil learning indicators such as criterion reference tests and norm reference tests, and very important school context and pupil context variables such as the student's English language learning level, the socioeconomic level, and develop a statistical model that takes into account all of those variables to give us what value our teacher preparation adds to pupil learning by looking at pupil gains scores, much as Bill Wilson has in his CSU survey.
Okay. Did you want to add something, Michael?
I would simply add that, as Beverly's described, that our real unit of analysis is really the pathways within programs. We're interested in pupil learning data to try and give us feedback in terms of how we can better improve the pathways and programs that we have to make more effective teachers.
Okay, and I've just been informed to have a call from the state of New York, or maybe it's the city of New York for all I know. New York, are you there?
Yes.
Go right ahead, please.
I'm interested in learning more about how you achieve such a high response rate in your alumni and supervisor surveys.
iPods. iPods. We have a drawing that especially for the supervisors, for a certain number of iPods each year. And we've felt, especially the last few years, that's been very effective. I don't know whether that will continue to be effective or not, but it has been up until this point in time. I think what's interesting about it, too, is we also have a letter that goes to each teacher and the principal from the chancellor of our system, Charlie Reed, who has been behind this survey and the improvement of our teacher preparation programs every day.
Gina, I think you said you had a comment on that too?
I was just going to add
I like
that.
iPods. Can you do better than that?
No. Doing it 6 years in a row, we're getting more proficient at the ways to enhance response rates too. And on our campuses, we have people, sometimes staff, sometimes some of our teacher graduates, who call the folks who haven't responded yet. And you know, to just keep casting the net to get additional people responding, and that's effective.
Okay.
I might add, Jerry, that that's true throughout the system.
Yes.
We don't just do this one time. We get back to the universities make thousands of phone calls to those who have not responded the first time. So yes, we have incentives, but it just takes hard work.
Nothing like bugging people, is it? I have one final question, and we are going to have to wrap this up, but we've heard about the CSU Mosaic. We've heard about the Teachers for a New Era initiative. We've heard about the Urban Teaching Academy. How much of all of this is exportable somewhere else? How much of this could be duplicated or modified and taken on at another campus?
I'll take that on because that's the point of this program. We at AASCU believe that one of our jobs is to share these models with our other member institutions and with other teacher preparation programs, whether they belong to AASCU or not. We believe they are exportable. Of course, they need to be tinkered with. You can't just pick them up, drop them in your context, and expect the same thing to happen. But we're sharing them as a good model, just like a good teacher demonstrates with a good model. These teacher preparation programs we're holding up as models of what you might attempt.
And Mona, since the camera is still on you, why don't you just go ahead and say goodbye to the folks here.
Okay, thank you. We've shared with you a model that demonstrates a system-wide effort to build an evidence system for accountability and improvement of teacher education programs. It is important to remember that this is an example, a case study of one way to approach this challenge. We know that context matters and that all programs don't operate in a statewide system. However, the issues that have been highlighted in today's discussion need to be considered by all teacher preparation programs. How do you hold yourselves accountable? Are your graduates promoting learning gains in their students? Are you meeting state needs for the teacher workforce? Do your graduates stay in the profession? As you build systems for improvement or modify your existing system, it is important to ask the following questions. Do you have the data you need? Do you know how to use that data to improve your programs? Do you share data with appropriate parts of the university? Do you collaborate with community partners at the local and state level? We recognize that this is not something you can do alone. We also recognize that there are collaborative efforts occurring in other states, such as Texas, Wisconsin, and Louisiana, that are making significant headway. What these efforts have in common is that they are not simply gathering as much data as they can. They are purposeful about the data they collect. Data for accountability, for improvement, and most importantly, for determining if their program graduates have the knowledge and skills to improve the learning of their K-12 students. We hope this presentation will prove useful as you engage in this important work. Thank you for joining us.
And we do want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. We'd also like to thank you in the viewing audience for being with us as we've examined the topics of accountability and improvement in teacher education. If you would like more information about today's topics or would like to contact one of our presenting organizations, we have the following resources available for you. To reach Mona Weinberg at AASCU, access the AASCU website at www.aascu.org. Her email address is weinbergm@aascu.org. To reach the CSU system, contact www.calstate.edu/teacheredeval/ and comments can be directed to David Wright at dwight@calstate.edu. Cal State Long Beach information can be obtained by accessing the website www.ced.csulb.edu. And Cal State Northridge is available at www.csun.edu/TNE/. For copies of this program, contact Mona Weinberg at AASCU. We want to thank you, Julia Schachter, for helping pull together video clips for today's show. Also, thank you to film director Davis Guggenheim for giving us permission to use clips of the young teacher Genevieve, excerpted from his documentary titled Teach. As we close our program from the Advanced Media Production Television Studio at Cal State Long Beach, we hope we've offered some insight and stimulated some new thinking for all of you at your viewing sites. I'm Jerry Irvin, your moderator, saying goodbye, and we wish you well.